Hello.
Hi.
Kayla Lords.
John Brownstone.
Of Loving BDSM, where we help kinksters like you have happy, healthy power exchange relationships. We're back to answer a question. This time, one that's sort of near and dear to your experience, JB. We have a Dom whose sub loves to call her mommy, and she wants to make him happy, but also she is a mother, and so...
kind of a little bit of a conflict.
It's a weird moment. So we're going to hopefully give something to think about and maybe help if we can. Okay, let's get into the question. I stepped back into the BDSM lifestyle as a Dom about 2 years ago after an 18-year hiatus. Sexuality and kink have long been passions of mine, and even when I wasn't living my truth as a dominant, I've always been very passionate about the proverbial never yuck someone else's yum mentality, and I have zero tolerance for kink shaming. I've been very fortunate these last 2.5 years to find amazing resources such as your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I've met some really amazing people, including my current submissive. We met about 6 months ago. He has been a fantastic submissive, and it has been great fun witnessing our evolution both individually and together. Our communication foundation is strong, and one of the things I am most proud of about our dynamic. Many of our kink needs align, but like most things in life, nothing is perfect. I recall a while back JB mentioning that initially he had challenges with the daddy role and title. My submissive is very interested in adding a mommy title to our dynamic. With him, my Dom energy is definitely motherly, caring, and nurturing, and I enjoy calling him my good boy very much. Mommy has slipped out a few times in our play lately, and in the moment I let it slide. It's not a hard limit. However, I am actually a mother, so it's jarring to hear it directed at me during our scenes. I know he would absolutely stop saying it if I asked him to, but I know how much pleasure it would give him if I allowed it. And like many dominants, I'm all about using the things that pleasure my submissive to my full sadistic advantage. So I would love to hear any advice that you can give, especially from you, JB, about how you came to be okay with the daddy title.
Well, I was not okay with it at first.
You flat out rejected it and laughed your ass off when I asked.
and I guess, it was because of the daddy title per se.
Now, I'm curious. You, previous to me, had not raised a child who referred to you as daddy. You have raised children.
Correct.
But they never referred to you as dad, daddy. So you didn't have that kind of association.
No, I didn't have that. Okay. And yet, even though I didn't raise kids, I still had that
absolutely
perception.
Absolutely. You were their dad, for sure.
Okay. So, to use daddy for me in a different application was weird. Was very weird. I think I grew past that because I realized that the two are diametrically different. Okay, it took a bit for that to sink in, I'm not going to lie, but it eventually did.
So there was I know, okay, let me back up. I know the first time I asked you, because I was asking if you thought you could be a daddy Dom, because I was learning at the time and I was applying my knowledge and he fit the bill. And you laughed and went, no. I'm curious if it was the term itself or it was the idea of what daddy meant, if it was both.
It was a little bit of both, but mostly the idea of what daddy meant.
In a kink sense.
No, outside the kink sense.
So this is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah,
I'm trying really hard to get there, and I'm not asking the questions very well. So when I was asking you about being a daddy Dom, was it less about what it means in kink and more about the association? Yeah. Okay, that's where I'm, like, it wasn't that you were like, ew, daddy Doms, I don't want to be that kind of Dom. No. I always thought it was. I took it to mean that you didn't like that kink.
It had to do with the literal
gotcha.
use of the word.
Okay. At least we're now all on the same page. After all these years. I've been calling you daddy a very long time.
You have at this point, yeah.
So the first time I did call you, because I did not immediately just call you that. We talked about the dynamic. You had your response. And yet, I did a thing I would not say everybody should do, because I had to take it on a little bit of faith that I would not freak you out so much that you would be upset with me. Because first I asked you about it, and you were like, no. But then your behavior continued to, like, I just kept reading daddy Dom into it. And then in a very intimate, naked, sweaty moment, I called you daddy and you had this big reaction.
Yeah.
So when you heard it in that context,
in
what was different?
in that moment at that time, and I can't even say exactly what it was at this point, especially, but something just clicked.
Mm-hmm. It just felt right in that moment,
and it felt right in that moment, and from that point on, I was able to begin grasping that moniker.
Okay, so then that's what I'm curious about for this person's question. Anybody else who's going through it, once you heard it and it felt okay, what was that thought process? What was that energy to go from, oh, this isn't the worst I've ever heard, and his response proved at the moment it was not the worst thing he'd ever heard, to just accepting, yeah, that's who you are. Like, what was that like?
For me at that point, then I kind of started doing my own research. Okay. And as I kind of saw what was, involved with all this and what, the tenets of a daddy dom were, I was like, oh, yeah, that does kind of...
Am I looking into a mirror right now?
Yeah. So that's, kind of where...
So for you, it feels a little less like this particular journey that this person's on, because we talked about it, you rejected it, I went out on a big old limb, I could have been very, very wrong. It was intuitive for me, and speaking to other subs who might want to try this, I wouldn't recommend you just throw out a term, an endearment at a partner without really feeling like you know them and you've got that connection. Like, if there's any doubt, go ahead and wait that one out, because I wanted to say it for ages before I finally went, this just feels right in the moment. And like, I was getting my brains plowed out.
Yeah.
I was hanging off the side of a bed, and I'm still, because my brain compartmentalizes, I was still going, look, if he doesn't like it, you'll just apologize and you'll move on and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But I was like, this feels so right. And so I did it. That won't be true for everybody. If you don't feel that,
right.
Don't do it.
Absolutely.
I would not recommend that. Now, in this person's case, the thought that came to me when I was reading their question was, okay, it doesn't sound like for you, the vibe was off. You were not comfortable with the caregiver vibe at first. And
Correct.
It was less, the title is, for us, was intricately linked, but it was the, what does that even mean part. It sounds to me like for this person, it's, the vibe is fine. They're kind of happy to be that for their partner.
It's
maybe
just
it's the term.
The term.
Right.
And that's something that has been a quest in the community for a long time, because not everybody does like those titles. Now, at the same time, this one here, okay, would absolutely freak out if somebody else started calling me.
It's the only thing I'm super possessive about.
It is.
You have been a caregiver, Dom, for other partners, and I don't have a problem with that. I just said, look, I'm going to need you to find a different term. I don't. So if you had objected and said, this is the right term for me, we would have had to talk. I would have had to we'd have had to work it out.
Yeah.
Thankfully, your partners and you were like, we're going to let Kayla just be crazy. It'll be fine. But yeah.
But, and we have a long time friend, and, she calls me Papa Bear, so you may need to try playing with different terms.
Absolutely.
All right. Papa Bear, Mama Bear.
Maybe.
I know some people use the term puppy.
Poppy and mommy. Yeah. I'm not going to try and do an accent and insult anybody.
Yeah, no.
Y'all know. If you know, you know.
Yeah. So, there's different things like that you can,
Absolutely. And in preparation for this question, I found on Reddit ages ago, a Kinkster created a Google document for as many honorifics and terms, both for DOMs and subs, that they could compile from their own community. It's a massive list. It's two lists, one for DOMs, one for subs. One, I will link those in the places for anybody who's just curious to see what kinds of terms people use. And two, I went and was like, is there anything that to me, not knowing y'all specifically, but to me, jumps out as, ooh, this could be an alternative if it vibes, right? So I wrote some down in our little notes here. A couple did make me giggle. So somebody has done Domme, so it's Dom instead of saying mommy. The one that really made me giggle was Domme mommy. I don't know why that tickles me, but it does. And if it's just the idea of mommy because you are a mother, then don't like twist yourself into knots to try and make that work. The other thing that you mentioned is trying the term for mother or mommy or mom in other languages. Now I did a quick search. A lot of them are very similar, maybe just pronounced differently.
Yeah.
Then there's also forms of the word mom that maybe your own children never used. You know, to this day, my mother, I am 45. My mother is in her 60s. She is still mama because that's her name. Okay. That's her name. And I'm Southern and I've never called her anything else. So I could conceivably refer to somebody else if I was in that kind of role in mother. Mommy, no, because my children call me, still when they're trying to be sweet, will call me mommy. And they get what they want because it melts my heart. So then there's, I saw caregiver, like the very formal caregiver. I saw one that was caretaker, and I immediately started singing the Ghostbusters theme song in my head. Miss and your name, that is stereotypically kind of a Southern vibe kind of thing. We do that a lot, or used to. It's older generations now, where you're like when you're introducing a child to an adult, it's more common to go Miss and then last name, but it's very common in more emotionally intimate vibes, like this person is a family friend or, you know, an elder, Miss Mary, Miss Susan, right? And that might be an option. I saw somebody do Maddie, combo of mom and daddy.
Okay.
I was like,
okay.
And then, you know, you could even go like real like high fancy and madam. That might be too fancy for the vibe you're going for, but it really is all about the vibe. And it is about, I think about thinking outside of the box. If the term is too closely connected to other parts of your life and the term itself kind of gets you out of the headspace and gives you feelings that you don't want to have, but you want to be able to have this connection with your partner, there's nothing wrong with thinking outside the box and coming up with another term that you both connect to. So like I said, I'm going to link to those lists. Those lists have been invaluable to me for a few things. I'm very grateful to that person who compiled those lists. They're massive.
I bet.
And I don't know if the person adds to them all the time or not. I haven't noticed that, but so yeah, for anybody who's like, the terms that seem air quote standard do not fit.
Yeah.
Feel free to get creative, for sure.
I mean, I even have heard people use coach.
Oh, yeah. I've recommended coach, boss, judge. I've seen captain. I know for a fact we've met a couple that they use captain.
Yeah.
And they've even used other, like, doctor. And they were not doing medical play. That was just a title that worked, right?
What's up, doc? Yeah. I can.
You just have to get a carrot and then, you know, conduct an orchestra and an opera or something. If for anybody who's just too young, it's Bugs Bunny, y'all. It's Bugs Bunny. Anyway, God, I feel old now. So yeah, I think the first thing to solve for yourself, is it the vibe or is it the term? If you're good with the caregiver vibe, you know, there's something to the idea of just the more you hear the term associated with you outside of your actual parenting role, maybe you'll get used to it. But I don't think anybody should have to get used to something that they don't want to get used to. Like almost anything can be normalized. If it feels better to just find another term that resonates with both of you, that is the thing I would say. We have long talked about, do I wish my father was still alive? I mean, mostly. I might send him therapy bills, but if my dad was still alive, he was daddy, okay? My whole life. I never called him anything else. It never worked. He didn't like it. Okay? And I've always said, if he had been alive when I met JB and figured out I was kinky and figured out I was a baby girl, I don't know if I could have done it. Right. I really don't, because in my mind, that connection was a little too close. But I didn't have to worry about that. I've made that do you want to know how weird it is now? When I talk about my father to anybody who would have known I called him daddy, I cannot say daddy. I'm like, my dad, my father, you know, because now daddy has the association with you, and it don't feel right to So I don't know what I would have done if he was still living. Really don't. I'm glad. I'm not glad he's gone, but I'm glad I didn't have to decide.
You didn't have that weighing on you.
Right. And I can't imagine being a mommy, but I can absolutely understand if another person who I was not the parent of used that term for me. I think it would be jarring for me. I don't think I could disconnect and compartmentalize like that. You're welcome to just see if you get used to it enough times and then it doesn't matter or mean anything. But I think, just find another word that means something to the two of you that feels, that gives your sub that same feeling and resonates better with you. The thing that keeps coming to mind with a lot of what we talk about in all facets of power exchange is just how customizable kink is.
Yeah.
Like every facet of it, you get to customize and make it work for yourself. So yes, there are certain titles and labels and terms that we hear most often that are the stereotype, that are the cliche, that feel but are not air quote standard, right? Because nothing we do in kink is standard. That's kind of like the point, right? And I think most people just don't realize that they have alternatives and other options that they can try to see if that feels better than the examples that are most prominent and most public.
True.
And this is just one of those examples. Clearly, our experience is not the only one. If you have had something similar where you've either overcome a term or you found an alternative term that fit better, please feel free to share your experiences in the comments below. If you enjoy this, we love a thumbs up. If you like it enough to want to come back for more, please consider subscribing.
And go ahead and ring that notification bell to get updates and new content.
I'm going to point to my boobs, actually. There goes the monetization. Just do what Daddy says. I don't always remember, but life is easier. Just do what Daddy says. I'm just saying. From me to you, free advice. Just do what Daddy says.
Okay.